And and it was, of course, the change of command ceremony is always a big deal. You know, they have to go up and read their orders off and all this. It's the way I remember it. I never had to read any orders, but
yeah, it was the
that's what they did. Said I had to have orders. That you're now relieved. Kind of like, you know, when you get a new president, they go through the little procedure. Said, okay, you got it.
The Navy is very big on tradition and ceremony.
Yeah. So that was one of the passing in review. You know, they passed the colors by, and this was that's the next one is the picture of the crew of the plane that crashed.
I've got these pictures already, and I'd like to get this one. I haven't got the.
That's a pretty nice thing. I think that's.
Yeah, let me get this out and you can explain this one here.
Okay. John Good, who had been on the crew, actually went to two of his friends where they're buried in their home cemetery. They were ID'd positively, and the top picture is Norman Russell's grave in Louisiana. I didn't put the location there, but it's in, I forget the name of the little town. And he put a vp-5 cap on him to take a picture of their grave. And then the bottom one is Bob Hurst, who is buried in Alabama in the family cemetery.
Okay.
You said you already had a picture.
Yeah, I've got those pictures.
That's out on the left. I couldn't positively identify in the other picture, but if you look at the two pictures, it looks like to me.
Yeah, that's the guy that was.
I never flew with Al because he actually took my place when I came off. He came on, so that's the reason I never flew with him, and he hadn't been in the squadron that long. This the next one is one of the crews that was in Iceland at the time, and we're actually flying the rescue the search missions.
Oh, okay, let me get a shot of these. Oh, that's a regular photo there.
I know it's just a better copy, I think.
Oh, okay.
I believe that's Crew 8. That the officer in the picture was actually in command. He was the second in command, so he was actually the senior officer of the detachment after Kozak was missing.
Yeah.
And I asked him, you know, how much input he had to do with the search. And he said none. As far as telling him where to look, they just told him, "Well, go fly and look here," you know, and that's what they did. So he, an Air Force general, whoever, that's just my picture.
Well, let's get there.
So that was after the crew had left to go to Iceland. Another technician came out and found me on Saturday morning. I actually wasn't on the base. I was out in town. And he said, "Don, said, your crew's gone." And I said, "Yes, they left last week." And he said, "No," said, "they didn't come back from patrol." And, oh no. Yeah, that was January the 13th. And on the 14th was a Sunday. They had I think every member of the detachment showed up in church in the base chapel for a prayer service, hoping for their finding. But of course, anytime you go in those northern climate,
there's no chance.
It's not very much chance. There have been records of people, if they land in the right place and just a forced landing and not a crash, just a forced landing or something. You know, they can make a good landing if they know they're going down and things like that. But, this is Bonnie Williamson, who was Norman's fiancée again, and one of her roommates. And when I came back through Jacksonville, I left on the 15th of January, of course, and she was still hoping, of course, too, that they would not be found. The girl on the left is Bonnie Williamson's fiancée. I think I dated the other girl. I got her name written. I can't think of it.
Shameless.
40-some years ago, and I can't remember.
Yeah, Jeff over there.
I'm amazed at how good you guys' memories are. When you're flying with these crews, when you fly and you work and you live together, it's so much like family.
Well, like I say, you don't get as much association between the enlisted men and the officers if you don't fly with them. But when you fly with them, of course, it's a different matter. You're eating together and working together and side by side and communicating and in some cases almost sleeping together. If you go out and end up having to sleep on the plane or something like that, and which happened a few times.
Just one here?
This is just a retirement after that, a couple of days after that, retirement. And so there's no more of that bunch in here.
Okay, this one.
That's the last one of the...
And didn't you have just a good picture of a P2 that was in here? You showed me.
Yeah, you went over it. You passed it over. It was a small picture, but it was right here. This was a picture. There's a picture of the plane and a list of the crew underneath it. I've got full names for all the crew there. And a little story of how come some of them were there and why they were there. They hadn't been on the crew or...
Yeah, like Dr. Brown. He was just
Dr. Brown was getting his flight time in. Yeah. I don't remember who sent me the email. I had an email from another guy the other day. Said he went to church and got to talk with this guy, kid there, a young kid. He said, I was born in Iceland. He said, my father was in the military there in 1961.
Wow.
I was born there in 1961, and they got to talking, and this Dr. Brown, John Brown, actually delivered him.
Oh my gosh.
The kid that he was talking to. His name is on his birth certificate.
I guess it is a small world.
And one of the officers, Badger Smith, had wanted to go to Iceland just because they thought it was a bigger ASW challenge in Iceland, more chances to look for Russian submarines than there was in the Mediterranean.
Well, which is there here, right, in the Strait of Norway, is it they call it? Where
Denmark.
The Denmark Strait, that's right between Iceland and Greenland, and that's where a lot of the Russian submarines come down. That's what you call your hunting grounds, right?
Yeah, that's what they say, yes. They come down out of the northern waters and go through there, and that's a good place to look for them.
And what you would do to drop sonobuoys?
Well, if you didn't just go out and drop sonobuoys, if you had a suspected target or something, then you start dropping sonobuoys, or a reason to look in a certain area, then you would drop sonobuoys. It would help you home in on them. But you didn't just go out in the ocean and start dropping your sonobuoys and hoping one of them would pick up something, you know. You'd be wasting a lot of sonobuoys. It's a big ocean.
Do you know how much area one sonobuoy can listen? I mean, how much?
Well, it varied depending on the water conditions, things like that, but say maybe a mile.
Oh, okay, so I thought it was a lot more. Probably the ones in the P3s there.
The more advancements, they've made advancement in them, and sonobuoys a really big advancement. Even now we only had 16 channels, so most sonobuoys we could operate in any one area of 16, because otherwise you'd have two of them operating on the same frequency, and you wouldn't know which one you were listening to anyway.
Oh, okay.
So
how often did you find a Russian submarine?
Back then, not that often. We get a lot of, but of course our presence there was supposedly keeping some of them underwater.
Right.
You know, so we did force a few to surface.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of guys before where they went by a submarine at surface and they would actually drop things down to candy and American Playboy magazines.
Once I heard they dropped some vodka down to them. I don't know whether that's true or not, or how they had a bottle. Maybe they went back and got a bottle of vodka, because they didn't normally carry vodka on the planes.
Yeah.
Unlike the British Navy, we couldn't handle booze.
All right. Okay. I think that'll be a big help here, because I'm trying to get a little bit more background. So many people just don't really know what the whole mission, and especially during that time when the Cold War was at its height.
Yeah, so ASW was a big thing for 20, 30 years, you know, and the threat of the submarine presence, you know, was enough. And of course, the big thing was you try to keep a step ahead of them, you know, finding them before they could figure out how to avoid you.
Years later, when Ronald Reagan was the president, you know, that was a big thing. It's just keep us strong, you know.
Some of the secrets that were later exposed, I forget the guy's name, and that
Hanson, the Hanson family, when they used to...
No, there was a singer named Weston or West, or I forget his name now. I just heard it too. But one of the secrets he gave away was how to make their propellers on the submarines quiet. Well, we could make ours quiet, but the Russians were extremely noisy, and it was all in the design of them. And one of the secrets that he passed to the Russians was the design of the propellers. And after that, the Russian submarines were harder to detect after they became quieter.
And what year around was that about?
When was that? 10 years ago when they gave away the...
Oh, yeah, okay. I know there was one family where there was a...
There was a Hanson. I remember the family. I don't think this is a family, but this was a single individual that passed the secrets, I think. Somebody could tell you the name, but I can't. It doesn't come to me right now. My memory for names is not real good.
Right. So many people don't realize that the Cold War, even though it wasn't an actual war, it was so important to keep, what we're...
The threat was there. That's what it was, with their capabilities. They could get within striking distance of our cities, from just off the coast.
Right.
So you didn't want to be able to... You didn't want them to be able to do that, so although you were looking for them, you were really practicing for looking for them. You were practicing being able to take care of them if war did happen.
Right.
You wouldn't, of course, drop anything on them to damage them or anything like that, but you were playing cat and mouse with them.
Right. That's what they call it, the big cat and mouse game. Okay, I guess that was really good. Anything else you want to add?
I can't think of it. Of course, we had a lot of other missions besides ASW. One of the missions from flying out of the north was they wanted to keep track of all the ice pack. The ice would break up and drift south. Because this is maybe more of a summertime thing. They want to know what the ice pack was because it affected shipping.
Oh, I see.
And again, you didn't want the ships running into icebergs and things like this. Because, most radar didn't pick up ice, which may have been another cause of the plane crash. Right. Because
some of the icebergs were like, what, 600, 700 feet?
Oh, yeah. But the thing was, when you're picking up Greenland, the coastline is ice. Right. So one of the tricks was you had to add so many miles to where you thought the coastline was. It was really 20 miles before that.
And especially if there's inclement weather, then it really can't.
Oh, yeah.
The ground stops and the air starts.
And necessarily, so we'll never know what caused them, but they weren't out of position. They had just decided to fly their flight backwards because of the bad weather. It was so terrible. The high winds and heavy snows, and visibility was nearly down to nothing. Just a few hours of daylight a day. And they decided to fly over, and it is what we think, is to fly over to the coast of Greenland and then turn north when they got to the coast of Greenland. But they flew too far inland and then crashed into the glacier. They didn't realize they were already hit over the coast.
Apparently they had no warning, probably. It was just...
Oh, no. They saw it, and they were 1,000, climbed 1,000 feet immediately, but they probably only saw it a few hundred yards ahead of them.
Right.
But they were right. They knew where they were. They weren't lost. If you take their first position report they sent out and plot that on a chart and plot where they crashed, it's right in line.
Right.
So that they knew exactly where they were, just off a few miles, and didn't realize we had hit the coast of Greenland already. If it had been a couple of thousand feet higher, but everything's hindsight,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Cut. What year were you in vp-5?
My name is Robert C. Hubbard. I was an AT-1, and I was in vp-5 from 1958 until 1961.
Okay, and I understand that you were in at Rota, Spain at the time of when the plane was lost. Is that true? Or were you over at Capitol at the time?
Probably in Rota, Spain. Because I don't think I was in Capitol there.
Okay, and basically, if you can just tell us in your own words what your thoughts are as far as when the crew was lost, when you heard about that they found the plane, and when did you hear about that there actually might be some bodies still remaining in the crash site?
Well, I heard about the plane